national champion after he won the NCAA Division II National Heavyweight Championship at the Cleveland Public Auditorium. Quote, "This has been a dream of mine for as long as I can remember," Haddad said. "I am so blessed to have been given this opportunity." Haddad went a perfect 25-0 this season and is just the second KU wrestler in school history to finish the season undefeated. Monsoon Mike says after some midweek showers, some nicer weather for Thursday. For late-breaking news, weather, sports, and traffic, sometimes before we can even get it live on the air, make sure you like our award-winning KUR Facebook page at Kutztown University Radio and on Twitter at twitter.com/KU Radio. And from KUR News, I'm Mike Regensberger. Have a great day.
Any views or opinions expressed on KUR are not necessarily those of Kutztown.
Girls can't dance crazy. Girls
can't play sports. Yeah. Girls can.
My sport is ice hockey. Everybody told me that I couldn't do it. You have to just be courageous.
I was always told singers really should just sing. Okay, well, let's challenge that whole notion. I heard that girls couldn't rap. I rap. Girls couldn't own businesses. I own my own business. I like it when people say you can't do something.
And I just learned that you have to be yourself. Girls can't.
Yes, they can.
Come on, cover girls. Rap. Be funny. Be off the wall.
Rock.
Be strong.
Run the show.
Make the world a little more easy, breezy, and beautiful.
He fires, and it is caught for a touchdown. It's gone! And Jerusalem! And the Sixers have scored 9 in a row. Are you kidding me?
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the, I guess you want to call spring break edition of the Tyler Werner Show, right here on Kutztown Radio, talking Philadelphia sports. And yes, I mean, the classes this week are non-existent here on Kutztown University campus, and quite frankly, walking to the McFarland Student Union building today, it looked like a ghost town out here. It was strange. I'm not used to it, but nevertheless, here we are live on the Tyler Werner Show. Got a lot of sports talk today. You know, obviously the March Madness tournament, as far as a national standpoint goes, is coming up. But we definitely got our share of Philadelphia sports talk issues to talk about today. Unfortunately, after being a little raspy last week, the voice is back to 100%. Unlike maybe Tiger Woods is back, but nevertheless, here we are, and the voice is back to 100% today. Obviously, you know, doing this show on a Tuesday afternoon. Last week, the free agency period for the NFL began at 4 p.m. So you know, the show, there's a lot of things floating around as far as free agency goes. And with the Philadelphia Eagles floating around, you know, just a few hours before the official free agency period began in the NFL. And, you know, obviously, last week, a lot of talk was surrounded about, you know, the Eagles filling the safety position, probably the biggest gaping hole on the team, on the Eagles defense in general. And Jarius Byrd was obviously the biggest name floating around out there. And of course, you know, there's TJ Ward. His name was also floating around out there. Cornerback wise, you know, obviously, you know, Antonio Cromartie and, you know, Corey Graham from the Ravens was a name that was floating around out there. And, you know, of all these names, the Eagles didn't get any of those guys. As a matter of fact, they acquired safety Malcolm Jenkins from the New Orleans Saints. And, you know, it's a little odd. I mean, it's a little ironic, actually, that the Saints would then go and acquire, you know, big name safety Jarius Byrd after giving up Malcolm Jenkins. And so, you know, the Saints wanted to just get rid of Malcolm Jenkins. They didn't really have any interest in re-signing him. But you know, at a pretty cheap price for, you know, safety position as compared to getting Jarius Byrd or TJ Ward, the Eagles got Malcolm Jenkins, you know, at a pretty cheap price. And obviously Malcolm Jenkins it does not have the kind of track record that, some of these other bigger name safeties have. And, obviously, again, I mean, it's a lot of questioning as to, what exactly, why exactly the Eagles want him. I mean, I don't know. Maybe, the conservatism, continues maybe, with Howie Roseman in the offseason. And, ever since that free agent frenzy a few years ago, in the condensed offseason, and they got Nnamdi Asomugha and Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie and, amongst other guys in free agency. They've continued to be pretty conservative when it comes to free agency in the offseason. And, that kind of continues here with what they did in this free agency period thus far. They didn't do a whole lot really to improve the defense, which I if anything, I guess leads me to believe that hopefully they're going to draft well, definitely gear the draft towards defense, because we'll talk about this in a moment. But the offense is now locked and loaded. I think coming, look as we look forward to the upcoming NFL season. But again, as far as defense is concerned, I guess they like the young core that they have. And Malcolm Jenkins, I mean, there was a theory thrown out by Sal Paolantonio, ESPN insider, that that the Eagles did not want to bring in, a really highly paid safety, whereas the guys in the rest of the secondary, where the guys in the secondary and the Eagles are not, are all lower paid, lower salaried guys. I guess they didn't want to bring in, Jerry's Bird making, close to $10 million, or however much he's going to make, with the New Orleans Saints, or and then T.J. Ward, to the Broncos. And, I guess, Sal Paolantonio theorizes that the Eagles didn't want, they kind of want to keep the chemistry going with the young guys that they have. And I guess they didn't want to overpay for anybody.
I agree.
I mean, I guess that's an interesting theory here. And I mean, who knows? I mean, Malcolm Jenkins, is still young enough. Maybe he can improve here on this Eagles defense. I mean, we definitely saw some guys, play better than we thought we would, at least last season, on the Philadelphia Eagles defense. And, I guess that can be, perhaps that can be a possibility with Malcolm Jenkins. A lot of people say, he's pretty well-rounded overall as a player. He does a lot of things good, some have said, but, he doesn't do anything really great. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But one thing I'm a little, perturbed about is that, I mean, he's been playing, several years in the NFL already, and Malcolm Jenkins said himself that there's one thing something like that, like if there's one thing I got to work on, it's tackling. And, I'm thinking, really? Like,
I just think somebody owes us
4
an
years,
explanation, that's all.
4 years or however long it's been in the NFL, and you got to work on tackling. I mean, that's a little, I don't know, a little woeful to me, because, I look at a team like, obviously the Seattle Seahawks, and, see how they play. I mean, they don't miss tackles. And at times, with the Philadelphia Eagles, one of my big criticisms of the defense in recent years, not quite as much this past year, but still at times, is that they miss tackles. And, that's something you don't want to see. And, the whole concept of, trying to pop a guy, kind of collide into a guy and lay a big hit, oftentimes comes back to bite you when, it doesn't work out. Instead of, I just say, just wrap him up and bring him down the conventional way. I mean, that's the bottom line. I mean, a lot of guys nowadays, as you go through the years in the NFL, I mean, the way it has evolved fundamentally with tackling and stuff, you do see guys a lot miss tackles because they want to, pop a guy or lay a big collision kind of hit on him, and so I don't know, but you say you got to work on tackling. I guess please do, because that's definitely one of my pet peeves when I watch an NFL defense and even just any sports team in general. Fundamentals. You don't have to be flashy and this and that, but so. We'll wait and see how it goes, I guess, with Malcolm Jenkins. Maybe it'll pay off. Again, they got him at a cheaper price. They want more cap room still on the table. I guess that's fine. Now, a little more of this cap room actually went to acquiring another Saints player, but on the other side of the ball, Darren Sproles. Rather interesting pickup. Now, originally they picked him up for 1 year, but they extended his deal to 3 years. Sproles is going to be 31, although he's, the good thing here is that, Sproles is going to be a pretty young 31, because, for those who aren't familiar with, Darren Sproles, I mean, he's definitely more of a specialty kind of player. He's not, he's not the guy who's going to have 20 plus carries a game, if they're going to put the, like LaShawn McCoy or, Adrian Peterson. He's not that kind of back. But obviously he is very effective in the screen game. His upfield acceleration, he gets the ball near the sideline and then just, boom, he's up the sideline. And, even as he, starts getting into his 30s here, his speed has still been pretty top notch in acceleration. And he's a guy that he's just a guy that can make a play. And certainly that's something. When it came to the screen game with the Eagles this past year, I like LaShawn McCoy could definitely be a weapon in the screen game, and as can Darren Sproles. And not only that, obviously LaShawn McCoy's a big playmaker. You got Darren Sproles, a big playmaker. And you look around at the receivers. Deshaun Jackson can be a playmaker. Zach Ertz, I think, is going to come into his own. He's got his rookie season under his belt. You got, pretty consistent Jeremy Maclin. And who knows as far as Riley Cooper goes. I think he had the third most yards after catch. Or maybe it wasn't yards after catch. Maybe it was overall reception yards per reception average, I think is what I'm looking for there. And he, I think he had the third greatest in the league this past year. So you never know there. The Eagles obviously are loaded with weapons now. It's with the addition of Darren Sproles. Who again? He doesn't have too much mileage on him, given that he's been used as a specialty player, for the most part. He hasn't taken the typical punishment that, your typical first string running back would take. And so, I think it's, Sproles can still be a good weapon at least this coming season, and maybe the other 2 seasons that the Eagles extended him for. And not only that, this is definitely good because it's going to, a lot of people have also thrown out the theory that, well, this is good because they can preserve LaShawn McCoy a little bit. Certainly, which is good. LaShawn McCoy is, now, he's in his prime. And certainly after being the leading rusher in the season, certainly he has arrived as, perhaps the best running back in the NFL, around there with Adrian Peterson, and those other big names. But certainly if you could, normally it's when the Eagles would take LaShawn McCoy off the field, the opposing defense could think, like, oh, this is good. Finally, they're going to take LaShawn McCoy off the field for this play. But then, what if in the same breath, then they bring Darren Sproles out, while LaShawn McCoy takes a seat or something, So that's definitely an interesting element because, Sproles can be this other weapon. And what if there's a play where both guys are out on the field? You got Darren Sproles and LaShawn McCoy to account for. Again, two guys who can be really effective in the screen game. Amongst other things, obviously, Shady McCoy's a juking machine. Darren Sproles, if he gets the ball in open space, he can really, pick up yardage at the snap of a finger. So we're definitely, at least I think most people would be definitely excited for the Eagles to have brought in Darren Sproles for the next few years. Definitely, they're loaded up on offense now. Not that they weren't before, but if anything, they're deeper at offense now, and they're that can only mean good things. And certainly, as far as the running back position goes, it's a little interesting now because you wonder where Bryce Brown and Chris Polk are going to fit in all of this. I don't know. I mean, perhaps they're gonna trade Bryce Brown or something. Well, we'll have to wait and see there. But I like, I like Chris Polk as a power. I mean, he had he was in his rookie season this past year, and I don't think we've seen enough yet from Chris Polk. But from what I have seen of Chris Polk, I think I'd be interested in seeing if LaShawn McCoy was hurt or something. I'd be interested in seeing maybe the power game that we could see from Chris Polk. I don't know, but certainly, they're very deep at running back position coming into this season. And now, speaking of Darren Sproles, while we're still on the topic, don't know who has heard about it out there, but Darren Sproles' wife was particularly not very happy with how the New Orleans Saints, kind of treated the trade rumors of her husband Darren Sproles, and I definitely was vouching for her husband on Instagram last week. I don't know who out there has actually heard of the post, but she posted a rather interesting post on Instagram that I'll read right here, sticking up for her husband Darren Sproles. I am so disappointed in the Saints organization and the way they are treating my husband. I understand this is a brutal business, but when you have a good guy who works hard and does a lot for the community, you would think they would show a little more respect. To verbalize to him that they will release him so at least he can choose the team he wants to spend his last few years of the NFL on, and then take it back without a word and try to trade him, is bleeped up. I know I have no control over this, and God is going to work it out. But in the meantime, I'm going to vent and talk, blank. LOL. Who Dat Nation, get ready for a ride, because the seeds y'all front office is planning is not going to be a good look for y'all. See the way my God is set up, he gets the last say, and can you get you back better than the Compton curse out? I want to give these, so-and-so, and that's it. Obviously, had to clean up the expletives there. And I don't know who else is, again, this isn't news here, but certainly last week it was. And, I thought it was quite comical on, for instance, Mike and Mike in the Morning, trying to hear Mike Greenberg try to, clean up. It was rather comical to hear Mike Greenberg clean up some of the expletives there in that rather interesting post on Instagram. My buddy Mike Missinelli. Yeah. So yeah, we that a lot of people say that she should be a great fit along with Darren Sproles here in the Philadelphia Eagles nation. So again, I mean, Darren Sproles, I don't see how you can't be enthused about the signing, but about that signing, again, less, he doesn't have too much wear and tear on him, and specialty player. Definitely another complementary weapon to this already loaded Eagles offense. And now there continues to be some reports circulating around that Deshaun Jackson, does not fit in the locker room culture. And I mentioned this, a few weeks ago on the show, and an Eagles beat reporter, Tim McManus, has said this. I mean, I don't know how much credibility there are to these rumors yet, but the Eagles, they haven't really addressed any of those rumors or anything. So I don't know how much hearsay could be, but it's definitely interesting that they brought in Darren Sproles, another weapon, who again also on special teams is going to be a weapon as well. I mean, returning punts and kickoffs, definitely get some better field position most of the time for the Eagles. And it is rather interesting how they bring Sproles in, and it's sort of he can be very similar to Deshaun Jackson in a way, with the exception that he's a running back, plays out of the backfield and doesn't line up, like a wide receiver. So, but nevertheless, it'll be interesting to see, how the Eagles continue to address their team in the offseason here. You got the draft coming up, a little over a month. I guess they pushed it back a little bit into May this year, but it'll be interesting. Bottom line is it'll be interesting to see. And again, looking to see what they do with this defense. I guess they're going to draft. Definitely, hopefully there's a safety that can fall in their laps when it comes to their time to pick in the first round. As as far as big receivers go, I don't know really how much they need at this point. I mean, they got, they're pretty good enough on the wide receiver position, and Chip Kelly does not, his offense, I guess, does not necessarily require a big receiver. That's one of the things here in this offense, this pretty fast-paced, up-tempo offense that Chip Kelly is going to use. So it'll definitely be interesting to see. And now to preview, before we head into the break in a moment, we can't continue too much longer in the show without talking about the Philadelphia Flyers and what they were able to accomplish this past weekend over the Pittsburgh Penguins. Definitely two big wins over the Pittsburgh Penguins. Big time rivals. It's always a bloodbath of a game between the two teams, regardless of the situation, regardless of what's going on in the standings. But the Flyers, nevertheless, they get two big wins, which help them in what is a very tight Eastern Conference playoff race as we get down to the wire here in the NHL season. So we'll come back from the break and we'll definitely talk some Flyers and what they've managed to accomplish in the past couple of weeks. Right here in the Tyler Werner Show, 610-683-4859 is the number to get in. And the Facebook page to get in, facebook.com/Tyler Werner Show. We'll be right back after this.
It's Telescopic Topics, a look into the world above us.
I'm Amanda Glenlast. Since the beginning of time, humans have looked to the stars. The question is, why? Why do we find it so fascinating? Why do we invest billions of dollars into making rocket ships in order to put people in space? What are we searching for? It's a question that's been around for centuries, but there still isn't one specific answer. In reality, we search the sky for many different reasons. Some people say space exploration is for practical reasons. In an article called Motivations for Space Exploration, written by William Bainbridge, he uncovers the different elements of reasoning. The first is that we go into space to learn more about physics, which gives us a better understanding of the entire universe and its functions. Another is that without space, we wouldn't have satellites or GPS, which have been amazing innovations within the past years. But even more, Bainbridge says that it satisfies the human spirit. He states that we struggle in figuring out our universe. This, in turn, presents a challenge, and without that challenge, civilization would stagnate. However, in Space Exploration Goals for the 21st Century by Michael Rycroft, a different reasoning is pushed. Rycroft says that we explore space because civilization may self-destruct, or there may be a giant natural event rendering the Earth uninhabitable. Because people fear the possibility of things like overpopulation, asteroid collision, depletion of resources, and global terrorism, we look to the stars to find a solution. Expanding on this, Bishop Nash, author of Voice of the Voiceless, states that we're going to have to permanently leave Earth sometime. Not today, not tomorrow, maybe not even in our lifetime, but someday. We look to the stars for a number of different reasons, but could one of those reasons be that our future is looking back at us? Perhaps scientist Konstantin Tversky was right in saying, the Earth is the cradle of the mind, but we cannot live forever in a cradle. Until then, we may never know.
Telescopic Topics, a look into the world above us. Stay tuned to KUR for more telescopic topics, and for more information, or to hear this segment again, click on the Telescopic Topics icon on the KUR website at www.kutztown.edu/KUR. Telescopic Topics is a production of the KU Physical Sciences Department and is recorded by KU astronomy students in the studios of KUR. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
.26, right here in the Tyler Werner Show on Kutztown Radio. That was some deep stuff from Telescopic Topics right there. But anyhow, we got some deep Flyers talk to get into while we're at it. So, as we were talking about last week, last Tuesday night, the Flyers had a game against the New Jersey Devils, division rivalry game. Now, New Jersey Devils are they're kind of a lower tier team in the Metropolitan Division as far as the playoff race goes. They're a little bit on the outside looking in, but nevertheless, the Flyers had unfortunately they had a 2-1 loss in regulation against the Devils last Tuesday night, and there was a little controversy amongst some Flyer fans with the way that game ended. In the final seconds of the game, there was a play where Scott Hartnell was in front of the net. I mean, he was in the goalie crease basically, and he kind of caused the puck to go into the net, but only when kind of pushing Marty Brodeur, still goaltending for the New Jersey Devils after all these years. And got a goaltender interference call, and the goal that would have tied it was waved off. Flyer fans were not happy about that, or at least most of them. But I got to be real here, and Scott Hartnell is known for trying to get away with things like that, and he put his rump in Marty Brodeur's face and knocked him down. I mean that's goaltender interference, and you can't do that, So if you want to, for that game, if you want to look more towards a logical excuse for why the Flyers didn't win that game, maybe it was the 0 for 6 power play performance that the Flyers had that maybe definitely contributed to that. A lot of missed opportunities there. So
I agree.
If you want to look for an excuse for that game, maybe that, but. Nevertheless, after that, as I was mentioning, the Flyers would have, a few days of rest until their back-to-back series with the Pittsburgh Penguins. Tuesday, and then they didn't have to play until Saturday when their first game with the Penguins, and that was that's the last time this season that they're going to get a kind of break like that. now it's really crunch time as we get down to the wire here. But their first game against the Pittsburgh Penguins on Saturday afternoon was clearly you could tell that the Flyers were well rested, because they were, they looked fast out there on the ice, and they delivered a big 4-0 shutout over the Pittsburgh Penguins. Now, I'll put it into perspective, I guess. The Penguins had a long list of scratches for this game. They were missing a few key players, no question about it. But their lead players, I guess if you want to call, Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin were on the ice, and they could not, they really could not get it done, in this first game, and ultimately in the second game the next day. But certainly, 4-0 shutout, and the Penguins were held pointless. These major players that, before the game, the coverage teams, against the Flyers, Crosby has this many points, and it's almost like I think I looked at the stats, and it was like he was averaging almost 2 points a game against the Flyers, and obviously it's been a big rivalry, but that first game, they just got shut down, and the Flyers had no trouble scoring. Flyers had a big shots on goal advantage. Certainly, they looked fast. And it was great. I mean, it's nice that it's spring break, because this weekend, I felt a little like a kid again. Then on the weekend, I got to sit down and watch 2 big Flyers games back to back, and it reminded me of some good old days when I was a kid, and I didn't have as much on my plate, and I could watch, I could sit down and watch an entire Flyers game, even though by the third period it was pretty much over, at least that first one on Saturday. And still to this day, if you're familiar with the Flyers broadcast team on Comcast Sportsnet, it's always, it never gets old when, somebody, I guess, on the Flyers scores a power play, and, you got Jim Jackson going, so-and-so scores for a case of Tasty Cakes. And, I always wonder where that whole tradition came in. But nevertheless, I remember, 10, 12 years ago watching Flyers games, and, Jim Jackson, saying that line when, I guess when somebody scores on a Pico power play. So, yeah, I mean, and also in that game, definitely a great visual was when Sidney Crosby actually, a chance for the Pittsburgh Penguins to get in that game. Sidney Crosby actually had a breakaway, and I forget who, I don't know if it was Matt Reed or one of the Flyers defensemen was trailing behind Crosby, and what looked like a breakaway, and perhaps a very likely goal for the Penguins to get on the board. Matt Reed makes a very nice defensive play with the stick, clean, no penalty shot or whatever, and denies Crosby of shooting the puck, and the puck went into the corner, and Flyers defenseman just starts skating away with it. Maybe it wasn't Matt Reed, I forget who it was that made the play, but nevertheless, either way, it was a good play. On good defensive play over Sidney Crosby, and as the said Flyers player begins to skate up the right boards, Crosby just kind of takes his stick and out of frustration kind of pokes him in the back, draws I believe a high sticking penalty, and goes to the box. So that was definitely something that Flyers fans would get a kick out of, as there's always, ever since Crosby has entered the league, and, in the Pittsburgh Penguins, there's been this, crybaby Sidney Crosby kind of hatred that the Flyers have had. And, and so definitely a lot of history there. And, it was a little symbolic, definitely, that first game, that the Penguins were the team that was, that were getting penalties and that were frustrated, and, this and that, and a guy like Sidney Crosby, one of the premier players in this league, drawing a penalty like that, getting frustrated over a clean defensive play. You gotta love it if you're a Flyers fan. So that was some good stuff right there. Definitely a Saturday afternoon well spent with the guys. Jim Jackson calling the game, and Keith Jones, and of course your rinkside I guess analysis guy, or whatever you want to call him. The great Steve Coates. Oh my God! Obviously, having a good time calling that game. That must be one of the coolest jobs in the world, to be right there, rinkside, and seeing the Flyers action right there in front of your very eyes. But then that was at the Wells Fargo Center. Then the next day, not even 24 hours later, had to travel over to Pittsburgh and take on the Penguins in their own home building. And this time it was a little tougher, even though essentially the rosters were basically the same as far as scratches go and injuries go. You definitely had to think here that it was going to be it wasn't going to be as easy as it was the day before. It wasn't going to be another 4-0 shutout. And you had to think that the Penguins were going to come out with a little more firepower. And, certainly they did eventually, but at first it was all Flyers in this game once again. The Flyers getting up to a 2-0 lead, and, the Penguins kept it competitive. They stayed in the game. They tied it at one point. Then the Flyers, were up 3-2, and, there was another lead change and this and that. And basically what it came down to was the Flyers having to hold on to their 4-3 lead in the third period. Again, Flyers coming out big early as they had the game before. But, this second game at Pittsburgh was a more competitive hockey game. And, it came down to the Flyers having to hold on to the lead. And certainly that they did, as in the third period they held the Penguins scoreless and walked out with another win. And, back-to-back against Pittsburgh. I don't know if... I think the stat is that the last 10 games at Pittsburgh's building, the Flyers are 8-1-1 against the Penguins. That's pretty one-sided for, a Pittsburgh Penguins team that is, a top 2 or 3 team every season in the NHL, it seems, for the past several years. That's quite interesting. And this season the Flyers are 3-1 over the Penguins. So certainly a lot of Penguins fans are probably a bit weary if they end up matching up against the Flyers in the first round of the NHL playoffs, or at any point in the NHL playoffs. And as we look at the standings, we'll in a moment we'll talk about how that could happen. But the big story at the end of this second Flyers game was when the Penguins pulled the goalie, and it was the final seconds of the game, and the Penguins were beginning to move the puck down the ice, and there was a big missed call, missed offsides call. This is no joke. This is no. I mean, if you saw the game, and you understand the offsides rule in hockey, you'd know exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, there were like two Penguin players that were, past the blue line in the Flyers zone, and the referees, I guess, missed the offsides call. And even Claude Giroux, who's out on the ice, as this was happening, was pointing at the offsides Pittsburgh Penguin players. Meanwhile, while the refs kind of missed it, and Crosby was actually ironically charging down with the puck, with this missed offsides call, takes it and rings it off the post, and it was no goal, and the Flyers would ride off into the sunset with the 4-3 win in regulation. Now, referees missing calls, I don't know. Some people might want to call it karma. I know before the game, I remember watching the Penguins warm up. They had like these St. Patrick's Day green themed Pittsburgh Penguins jerseys on, and after ringing that last shot off the post from your captain Sidney Crosby, and ultimately losing the game, I guess so much for those lucky Irish practice jerseys before the game. So ultimately, the Flyers walk away with the win. 2 big wins over the Penguins, who again, the Penguins probably have this division all but wrapped up in the final 15 games or whatever, however left there is in the season. But so essentially, right now, the Penguins ultimately are playing for first seed in the NHL playoff race. Although they're a little bit behind the Boston Bruins, as the Bruins are 9-1 in their last 10 games, whereas the Penguins, Flyers just gave them 2 losses right there. That sets them back a little bit, and while the Bruins now stand at 97 points, the Penguins stand at 92 points, and even with the Penguins having played 1 less game, that's still that's still a bit of a setback for them, as the Bruins are 9-1 in their last 10 games. And certainly we'll as we get down to the third part of this show, or I guess the third period, if while we're on it talking hockey, we'll go through the tough Flyers schedule that's to come here down the wire in the season, and then we'll close up on a few more NFL topics that are floating around, and whatever else is going on in the Philadelphia sports realm talk. So if you want to get in quick, 610-683-4859 is the number. And we also have the discussion post on Facebook.com/Tyler Werner Show. If anybody is looking to post a thought or two on what's going on as we're here on spring break on Kutztown Radio, it is the Tyler Werner Show live. We'll be right back after this.
Hi, I'm Gerald McRaney. Is there anything you wouldn't do to live longer or feel better? Would you make a few simple changes in your lifestyle if you knew it could save your life? Take cholesterol. A high blood cholesterol level can cause strokes and serious heart disease, but exercise and simple changes in your diet can reduce cholesterol and make you feel better.
For your free booklet, visit the Will Rogers Institute at wrinstitute.org or call toll-free 877-957-7575 and find us on Facebook and Twitter. The Will Rogers Institute, since 1936.
Green light. Hey girl, school zone. I'm getting hungry. Car changing lanes. You want to meet me for pizza? Stop sign. Intersection clear. Yeah, street. Pizza sounds good. Ball in street? Girl in street!
It's hard to concentrate on 2 things at once, like texting and driving. Stop the text, stop the wrecks. How will you stop texting and driving? Tell us at stoptextstopwrecks.org. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Kathy Ireland for the Will Rogers Institute.
Are you worried that your kids aren't spending enough time being physically active? The best fitness is family activity. Ride bikes, play soccer, or just take a walk through the neighborhood. The important thing is to get your children moving with you. For more information on family activities and fitness, call the Will Rogers Institute.
Call toll-free 877-957-7575 or visit wrinstitute.org and find us on Facebook and Twitter.
Who will the Eagles pick up as they look to improve in the offseason? Will the Flyers become a serious contender as they make a push for the NHL playoffs? And what will the 76ers and Phillies do to get back to elite status? We'll discuss all that Philadelphia sports talk right here on KUR on the Tyler Werner Show every Tuesday from noon to 1. Call 610-683-4859 during the show to climb in and have your thoughts heard live on the air.
Hello, this is David Kurtz. If you're interested in an eclectic mix of vivacious musical foliage of the independent and alternative persuasion, I would like to invite you to The Garden. Tune in on Sundays, 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern, as I present some of my favorite selections that you're also sure to enjoy. Only on the radio voice of Kutztown University, KUR.
.45, quarter of one, right here on the Tyler Werner Show on Kutztown Radio, on this spring break edition of the Tyler Werner Show. Again, it's like a ghost town up here on Kutztown University campus. Rather interesting sight to not see anybody walking the walkways and the sidewalks here of the campus, and but nevertheless, it's nice to have a week, a few days of rest from classes here on Kutztown University campus. I'll tell you who's also been given a few days to rest. At least last week, Jimmy Rollins on the Philadelphia Phillies has this unpromising spring training kind of rolls on here with the Philadelphia Phillies organization. Last week, Larry Bola, the bench coach, was calling out Jimmy Rollins, and there's some kind of feud going on here with the aging Rollins. Philly's great, but obviously getting up there in age, and of course Ryan Sandberg last week was kind of asked about it, and kind of asked about his Rollins' leadership role in this team and this and that, and Ryan Sandberg, gave him a no comment. So, how about that?
I just think somebody owes us an explanation.
The Phillies great here, and but apparently Jimmy Rollins is not waiving his trade clause, in his contract, and or his no trade clause, or whatever. But so, but I think clearly, as it's been mentioned before, this is an organization with a lot of reeling players here. Guys getting up there in age and this and that, and things are definitely looking bleak as we head into this Phillies season. As we're now only just a couple weeks away from the month of April and from the Phillies season starting. But fortunately, like we've been talking about. It'll be interesting to see what the Eagles do as they gear up for the draft. And, as the Sixers, there's not really much to talk about with them. It'll be interesting to see, what the Flyers do down the road here. Now, we just talked about the Flyers back-to-back nights, or, back-to-back afternoons, I guess you could say, taking care of the Penguins. Second game, not so easy, but just goes to show you that, even if the Penguins are the second seed in the playoffs and the Flyers end up with the 7th seed, which could be very possible, that might not mean anything. Because historically, the Flyers, regardless of standing, have been a thorn in Pittsburgh's side for the most part. And even if the Flyers have not had a winning record over the Penguins this season, they normally be pretty, even. Nevertheless, so just get in the playoffs and see what happens. I mean, I don't know. Now, if you're telling me if the Flyers get in and they have to play the Boston Bruins the first round, then that's probably too bad. But nevertheless, I mean, if the Flyers get in and make some noise in the playoffs, I don't know. Either way, I mean, I'm not looking for them to do anything major in the playoffs, as I mentioned before. Given this coaching change, and given that they got to, I guess, rebound from last year's disappointing season where they missed the playoffs. But tonight, 7:30, they have a tough game against the Chicago Blackhawks, who've actually cooled off a little bit, even defending Stanley Cup champions. But the Blackhawks have actually cooled off a little bit. So I don't know. I mean, see how they come out at the Wells Fargo Center against the Blackhawks. Thursday, March 20th. Well, this Thursday, I guess I might as well say. It's not that far ahead, but they take on the Dallas Stars. And then Saturday, another day between games. They take on the St. Louis Blues, who are currently the number one team overall in the NHL. They broke 100 points. I think yesterday. They now have 100 points. The first team to break 100 points, and that's still with 14 games to go. That's pretty interesting right there. The Blues are one of these teams that they haven't been very good in the past decade or so. I remember, last time that they were even decent was about 10 years ago or so, and they had Chris Pronger in his prime, who is obviously was brought here to Philadelphia a few years ago, and then they had Keith Kachuk back in that day, and Doug Waite and some other guys that made the Blues a good team. But now this year, with some of their younger guys, they've definitely stepped up their game. In their last 10 games, they're 8-1-1. So that's Saturday afternoon. That's who the Flyers have to look forward to coming here in Philadelphia. And then Monday, March 24th, they got the Los Angeles Kings, another pretty good Western Conference team. Fortunately, they have them at home as well. And then they got a big game next Wednesday. That's a little over a week away now, but against the Rangers, who are also in this playoff mix of teams that are looking to maybe trump the Flyers. And a lot of teams, they got the Maple Leafs, the Bruins after that, the Blues again at St. Louis, the Blue Jackets were in the Metropolitan Division at the Bruins again. I mean, they got a tough schedule up coming up here down the wire the next few weeks, and it's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out because again, you got so many teams in the mix here for the playoff spots up for grabs here in the Eastern Conference. Now again, certainly you have the Bruins pretty much locked up the Atlantic Division. You got the Penguins, who pretty much have the Metropolitan Division locked up, and then you got a few teams, the Tampa Bay Lightning, the Montreal Canadiens, and their division, who are they're higher ranked teams right now than teams like the Flyers and the Blue Jackets in the Metropolitan Division. But as far as the Metropolitan Division itself is concerned, which is ultimately where the Flyers want to be at the top of. First of all, at the moment they stand 1 point ahead of the Columbus Blue Jackets, who have 70. They played the same amount of games against the Blue Jackets, whereas the Rangers, who are a little further down, they've played a couple more games, but they're right in that mix. The Capitals are still in that mix, and so it'll be interesting to see how it comes down. But the thing is that 5 teams can come from one division, and 3 come from the other. So I think as long as the Flyers finish in the top 3 in their division, they'll be fine to get a playoff spot. And if they finish 3rd in their division, that could mean a 5th or 6th seed overall in the playoffs, where they face a 4th or 3rd seed. Because it looks like the wild card spots with this new alignment, depending on how the Detroit Red Wings finish out the season, I don't know. It could be 4-4 from both divisions, the way it's looking right now. But there's a possibility that it could be 5 teams from one division and 3 from the other, as I mentioned in the past. So it'll be interesting to see how that all shakes out. But the bottom line is the Flyers got a big game tonight. One game at a time, one tough game at a time. Is they've got an interesting schedule coming up against a lot of tough teams here in the NHL playoff race as we roll through the month of March here and head towards the official beginning of spring. Of course, the big NCAA March Madness tournament is now underway. I gotta be. I'm not a huge March Madness guy. I think a lot of the intrigue definitely comes from, the fact, you got this big 64 team bracket and all this and that. But, nevertheless, I mean, you got some interesting matchups. I guess, one of the college teams in this mix that might, kind of represent the Philadelphia area. That's, some would say, Villanova, number 2 seed in their conference. They're going to take on the 15th seed Milwaukee, in the Eastern region. I don't know. I mean, a lot of people have just like these random teams that they pick, or that they root for. They don't really have any connection to, but it is what it is. And nevertheless, we'll see how things shake out, and see what kind of upsets we get in the March Madness tournament. All to me, I mean, all that, I guess from my perspective, the big idea for the March Madness tournament, see some of these potential NBA talents that are going to come out of these teams, and see how their teams pan out in this tournament. See how Andrew Wiggins plays, and guys like those are going to be big or top prospects in the upcoming NBA draft, and could possibly land a spot on the Philadelphia Sixers roster. So, that's in that regard, it's it can definitely be an interesting tournament to watch, as it's obviously this huge competition that everybody looks forward to every year. Now, before we wrap things up here on this spring break edition of the Tyler Werner Show, just want to go over the NFC East landscape a little bit. A bit of a tongue twister there. With the way that the Eagles, seem to be headed in the right direction, despite, they got to improve their defense a little bit, obviously, as we all know. But, the Cowboys, Dallas Cowboys, they recently, I guess, got rid of DeMarcus Ware. He was getting up there in age. He went to the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos definitely adding some firepower on defense, I guess. Looking to improve that defense that may have hurt them a little bit last season after seeing what the Seahawks did to them in the Super Bowl. They added some help on the defense, definitely making a lot of noise in the free agency period this season. So essentially as far as the Dallas Cowboys are concerned, the best player on the worst defense in the NFL was gotten rid of by the Dallas Cowboys. So, and you got this whole thing with Tony Romo. Will he not be a part of the team next year? I mean, I would think that Jerry Jones, Romo is his guy as far as the quarterback position is concerned. But Cowboys seem to be heading in the wrong direction. The New York Giants, they actually signed Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, former Eagle, into their secondary, amongst acquiring a few other guys in their secondary on defense. But nevertheless, I mean, they lost Justin Tuck, and I'm not quite sure how how well the Giants can rebound after a pretty disappointing season last year. Don't know if they're young enough around the rest of their team to really maybe make a threat at the Eagles' division championship that they're coming off of, and that I would think they're going to once again reclaim. And then you got the Washington Redskins, Jay Gruden, new head coach. They have obviously Robert Griffin III, I guess, who's going to try to reshape his game, become more of a pocket passer, quarterback, and I don't know. They're another team that they're not going to have too many draft picks this year, considering, what they gave up to, the draft picks that they gave up, a couple years ago to even get Robert Griffin III in the first place. So, definitely I think the Eagles are headed, heading in the right direction, and, we have more to talk about there. But that'll do it for today on the Tyler Werner Show, and we'll talk more about this as we continue to move through the spring season here, or as we head into it, I guess I should say, as winter seems to be shutting down for the year, which is definitely a good thing. So that'll do it. Thanks for tuning in as always, and we'll talk to you next week on the Tyler Werner Show.